Hello and welcome to things I find interesting that happened today in the past, aka Tifitht Itp. This show is all about the events that occurred today and years past, both recognized by actual historians, but mainly things I find intriguing enough for me to bring to you. The source of all this information comes from the smart device application on this day, the icon of which can be seen as cutoff prevention at the beginning and end of each episode. The music in the background is Freefall by Audioscribe, which I found on the YouTube channel No Copyright Sounds. For links to the app, music, and anything else potentially interesting, check the underbar. Anyway, on with the show! Today is Freya's Day, aka Friday, March 4th, 2016. In 2009, the International Criminal Court, aka ICC, issued an arrest warrant for Sudanese President Omar Hassan al-Bashir for war crimes and crimes against humanity in Darfur. Al-Bashir is the first sitting head of state to be indicted by the ICC since its establishment in 2002. In 1998, in the case of Onacle vs. Sundower Offshore Services, Inc., the Supreme Court of the United States ruled that federal laws banning on-the-job sexual harassment also apply when both parties are the same sex. In 1991, Sheikh Saad al-Salim al-Sabah, the Prime Minister of Kuwait, returned to his country for the first time since Iraq's invasion. In 1986, the Soviet Vega 1 began returning images of Halley's Comet and the first images of its nucleus. In 1985, the Food and Drug Administration approved a blood test for AIDS infection, which has been used since then for screening of all blood donations within the US. In 1983, Bertha Wilson was appointed the first woman to sit on the Supreme Court of Canada. In 1980, nationalist leader Robert Mugabe won a sweeping election victory to become Zimbabwe's first black prime minister. In 1976, the Northern Ireland Constitutional Convention was formally dissolved in Northern Ireland, resulting in direct rule of the region from London by the British Parliament. In 1974, People magazine was published for the first time in the United States as People Weekly. In 1957, the S&P 500 stock market index was introduced, replacing the S&P 90. In 1945, during the Lapland War, Finland declared war on Nazi Germany. In 1941, during World War II, the United Kingdom launched Operation Claymore on the Lofton Islands. This became the first large-scale British commando raid. In 1933, the Parliament of Austria was suspended due to a quibble over procedure. Chancellor Engelbert Dollfuss initiated an authoritarian rule by decree. Also in 1933, Frances Perkins became the U.S. Secretary of Labor, also becoming the first female member of the United States Cabinet. In 1917, Janet Rankin of Montana became the first female member of the U.S. House of Representatives. In 1913, the U.S. Department of Labor was founded. In 1909, U.S. President William Taft used what became known as a Saxby Fix, which is a mechanism to avoid the restriction of the U.S. Constitution's ineligibility clause. He did this in order to appoint Philander C. Knox as U.S. Secretary of State. In 1890, the longest bridge in Great Britain, the fourth bridge in Scotland, was opened by the Prince of Wales, who later became King Edward VII. The bridge is 1,710 feet, aka 520 meters long. In 1882, Britain's first electronic tram started running in East London. In 1865, the third and final national flag of the Confederate States of America, aka the Stars and Bars, was adopted. In 1837, the city of Chicago was incorporated. In 1794, the 11th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution was passed by the United States Congress. In 1791, Vermont was admitted to the U.S. as the 14th state. Also in 1791, the Constitutional Act of 1791 was introduced by the British House of Commons in London, which envisaged the separation of Canada into Lower Canada, aka Quebec, and Upper Canada, aka Ontario. In 1790, France became divided into 83 departments, cutting across the former provinces in an attempt to dislodge regional loyalties based on ownership of land by the nobility. In 1789, in New York City, the first Congress of the United States met, putting the U.S. Constitution into effect. The U.S. Bill of Rights was also written and proposed to the Congress. In 1681, Charles II granted a land charter to William Penn for the area that will later become Pennsylvania. In 1519, Hernan Cortez arrived in Mexico in search of the Aztec civilization and its wealth. And in 852, Croatian Knex Trippier I issued a statuette, which was a document with the first known written mention of the Croat's name in Croatian sources. Births: Kim Jong-un, 1974, Chaz Bono, 1969. Deaths: Michael D. Moore, 2013, Saladin, 1193. And that concludes Tifitht Itp. For your dose of passive and daily, I am Ayo, and you are you. Toodles!